It's all coming back to me now. I remember Donnie tried to sell me the car. He actually showed up with the car to make a deal, the bulldozer. I think Donnie ended up winning on that one because I bought that bulldozer for Avery. I tried to get $4,000 out of him.
Behind Mike Hall's story on Rust Valley Restorers is a feud that ended what he loved most. Everyone knew he dealt with cars with a passion and expertise that's quite rare. But one day, an organization that wanted him and his franchise targeted him. From an immovable lawsuit to a huge financial mess, then declining health coupled with some toxic fans and multiple work frenemies, he had fought his own share of battles. And now he has decided to take a step back and shed more light on everything that has happened. What happened in these battles that caused him to lose his edge? And what were the fights with his son like? Join us as we uncover the various back and forths of Mike Hall's story. The CEO and his flaws. Mike Hall started his reality TV and streaming career much later in life, so most people never got to experience the same immersive view of his early years that the Rust Valley Restorers show provided. Standing at an imposing 6 feet 8 inches with his trademark lengthy blonde dreadlocks, Mike earned the nickname the Rasta Blasta due to his striking appearance and unique career. This career was steered by his incredible passion and a few here and there from his management team, but before he got the opportunity to even have managers, he was a passionate man who 100 times over 10 would choose passion over conventional thinking. This passion he showed on TV always drove fans to think he had always been making money from fixing cars, but that is not true. His true foundational wealth came from high-altitude explosives. For over 40 years, Mike worked in the high-danger slope stabilization and rock scaling industry. He gathered info and experience from this role and ended up as the founder of Chimera Springs Rock Works. And in that manner, the job that required him to hang from ropes on high cliff faces soon turned into a multi-million-dollar accidental TV deal. It happened by surprise while Mike was traveling all over Western Canada for rock blasting jobs. As he was trying to sell some abandoned vintage cars and land which he had collected, one of his listings went viral and some television producers got attracted to his wild personality. Why were they attracted to a simple auctioneer? Well, it was simple, really. Mike failed trying to sell a plot of land off for $1.45 million, so he just did what any normal person would do and raised the price 5 times. This wild personality followed him into television, and he would, more often than not, end up buying more cars than he sold, routinely ending his day at a loss. One would think that because of his popularity, he would be making more, but not in this case. Mike would rather undercharge clients just so he could save a car's soul. He sees himself as a caretaker of a car's soul, and as someone who is in charge of putting the broken cars back on the road. And even when he had already faced a loss when restoring the vehicles, he would rather want the car to have a new owner soon than have it spend another day rusting away in his garage. These informal deals would most often cause arguments with his crew, especially his son. But that didn't change anything. He felt he made enough money from his rock blasting company that it never occurred to him to rely on Rust Bros for primary income. The franchise was just there, existing as a guilty pleasure that he was obsessed with. With time, he stepped away to become a full-time TV subject, and just as he settled in, he got crushed by a devastating lawsuit. The TV star and the government at his neck. As the series was hitting a low point, more issues came in. Suddenly, British Columbia's strict land preservation laws were on his neck, and law enforcement started targeting him. Canada's Agricultural Land Commission and the Agricultural Land Reserve didn't agree with his methods one bit. They were in charge of protecting fertile soil from urban developers or commercial users like Mike. But it wasn't always this way. Way earlier in 1984 and 1996, these regulators approved a small, specific exemption of this rule in favor of Mike's property there in Tappan. In the 1980s and 90s, it was a small and modest antique auto museum, so it was not an issue for them, and he had nothing to worry about for the next 2 decades. But it all came crashing down 2 decades later when Mike completely blew past their legal parameters. He had now transformed his modest 1984 museum into a massive 5-acre commercial auto wrecking and storage yard holding over 500 unrestored vehicles. After the news reached these bodies, they wasted no time in acting. The ALC immediately ruled that parking hundreds of leaking, rusted car bodies directly over agricultural soil degraded the quality of the land. As soon as Mike heard the news, he tried facing it head-on. He tried making his shop legal. He and the shop's legal team sent an appeal to the court, but the ALC was stubborn. They rejected the application immediately, stating that letting him off the hook would simply encourage other landowners to degrade their land through non-farm uses, then seek the law's forgiveness through cash and enticing words. The government then issued a decree in response to his appeal. They decided that Mike was permitted to keep using the small shop structures they had originally agreed on, but he had to completely relocate all unauthorized vehicles off the land and scale down a bit. The commission also knew that if he tried evacuating the space immediately, it could ruin the space further, so they granted him a 2-year deferral window to clear the field. This countdown might have seemed big on paper, but it ended up forcing Mike's hand. Realizing he could not legally house his massive collection without facing massive fines anymore, Mike partnered with Electric Garage Auctions. Together, they decided to hold a massive multi-million-dollar auction to completely clear the property. But he was still reluctant, so he tried again to appeal. They revisited the ALC's walls with another appeal. In it, he applied to subdivide the Rust Brothers property into 2 distinct lots. If it were approved, they would chop the 3-hectare lot into 2 distinct parcels. Edward Wisniak, Mike's partner, who was the original owner of the land, would take a 1.54-hectare lot, and Mike Hall would get sole title of the remaining 1.47-hectare lot to secure his shop's footprint. Because the government hates losing farming soil, the 2 partners tried to offer the ALC a massive incentive. They proposed taking a completely separate 1.5-hectare piece of very fertile farming land that Mike owned over on Chase Falkland Road and giving it to the ALR. They hoped that offering the government fresh, high-utility soil elsewhere would convince them, but they were dead wrong. After seeing the long-term plans the duo had, they decided to stop entertaining the idea completely and just flat-out shut the door. Not a happy ever after. In the plans the commission rejected, Mike planned that once he had his own independent lot, he would take one of his 2 restoration shops and convert it into his private residence, using the second shop structure for agricultural storage. While the ALC happily accepted the auctioneer's negotiating chip, they didn't buy into the general idea much. They agreed that Mike's other property on Chase Falkland Road was fantastic for farming, but there were just so many negatives already. The first one was that the TV star had originally acquired the land through a simple handshake deal instead of legally, and those sorts of deals could go wrong at any time. And as they went wrong, the environment was in the middle, and anything could happen to it amidst a dispute. The second one was about the splitting he mentioned. They felt breaking up the plot would permanently shrink the size of the parcels, reduce the farming viability of the soil, and allow Mike to sneakily build residential housing on land where others were not allowed. They believed this could in turn cause more owners like him to be less on their toes and go about handling farmland as they saw fit. In their eyes, people could just do whatever to the farmland draft a really good defensive piece with money, and just walk out freely. There was simply no way it could work in their favor, and only one option was left: an evacuation by the offenders. As the Land Commission cracked down on Mike, public opinion in the tiny community of Tappan was deeply split. One section loved the downfall of the star, while the others were feeling sympathetic towards the whole situation. But one thing was undeniable: Mike had developed a small farming community into a huge space globally. But the critics didn't care. They were a vocal group of neighbors who viewed Mike's Field of Dreams as a massive, environmentally hazardous eyesore. They agreed with the commission's idea and wanted him out, saying things like he was releasing toxins into the area and polluting the local water table. They didn't see the situation as one where Mike was being bullied by the government. To them, they were just simply helping them enforce the basic environmental and zoning laws that they couldn't do themselves. Conversely, many other locals saw Mike as a community icon who brought tourism, jobs, and global fame to a quiet rural area. These supporters consisted of the Regional District Board. They backed Mike all through the process and didn't allow additional bullying from the other faction. And when he finally decided to liquidate his massive collection rather than move, they were there to offer support. Usually, an auction of that size would bring in more than enough revenue for the village, so most people expected Mike to also garner massive amounts of cash. They expected the profit to be so much that he would be able to move shop and completely forget about lawsuits, but they were in for a rude awakening. The massive multi-day auction attracted bidders from all over the world, pulling in millions of dollars in total sales. A few premium vehicles brought in massive numbers. For example, Mike's prized 1968 Chevrolet Chevelle SS brought in 6 figures, and a rare 1970 Plymouth Roadrunner sold for a premium. But despite the huge gross revenue, Mike did not walk away as a wealthy man. Because he had spent 40 years buying these cars at high prices, towing them, storing them, and now paying legal and auction house fees, his profit margins were razor thin. And even on that day, he sold off hundreds of the lower-end parts and cars for a fraction of what he originally invested in them over the decades. Ultimately, the auction achieved its primary goal. It satisfied the government's legal clearing order and saved Mike from ruinous fines, but it effectively wiped out his lifelong physical savings account of both cash and cars. Perhaps one of the reasons he didn't gain massive profit on that day was the people hating on it. Some even went as far as stealing on that day. Attacks on and offline. Unlike typical reality TV environments rife with bitter legal battles, canceled cast members, or malicious enemies, the car community and the public genuinely love Mike. He has 0 personal scandals, lawsuits from disgruntled individuals, or genuine haters. Genuine in the sense that, even if he had haters, they would be a small group of people who were just bitter for no reason. And yes, these people did exist. When Mike announced he was holding a massive liquidation auction to sell off his 500-car yard, it drew an immense amount of public attention. Unfortunately, this invited a wave of online negativity. First, some cynical internet critics accused Mike of selling out and manufactured a narrative that he was staging a fake crisis just to make millions off his fans. In the comments, a few individuals were there agreeing with the made-up theory. Some even came up with new ones of their own. In a follow-up documentary clip on their Rust Bros YouTube channel, Mike and his team admitted they read the toxic comments. They spoke on how he was genuinely hurt by people claiming he was just being greedy, explaining that losing his lifetime collection was deeply devastating for him too, and that the sale had nothing to do with chasing a massive payout. Despite the brief, nothing changed. From online bullying, a few decided to go and see what they could do to him physically. As the show grew in popularity, the physical location of the Rust Bros yard in Tappan, British Columbia, became widely known. This unfortunately brought out dishonest people looking to exploit him. During the stressful months when Mike was trying to pack up and clear out his shop, the yard was highly chaotic. Mike revealed that people were coming onto the property under the guise of looking around, and expensive tools and rare classic car parts began disappearing. Also, because he is known on TV as a soft-hearted guy who gives discounts, people frequently showed up trying to lowball him or manipulate him into giving up valuable parts for next to nothing, forcing his son, Connor, to step in as a gatekeeper. A sad and underrated fact to this whole ordeal was that while he was facing these, he also had battles with his health. The garage is no place for an old man. At 68 years old, the car lover's body is now feeling the mileage of his career. He openly addresses how he has tried battling it, and how this impacts his pace multiple times on his channel. It of course started from those 40 years he spent as a professional rock blaster and slope stabilizer. Those decades of hanging off cliffs, scaling rocks, and operating heavy machinery have taken a major toll on his joints and spine. Combined with heavy lifting in the garage, he is simply much stiffer and slower than he used to be. When asked about it, he sometimes circles back to his father's passing. Mike's father tragically passed away at age 60. As Mike approached and then passed that age, he explicitly stated that watching his friends develop severe health problems or pass away made him realize he couldn't keep going at 100 miles per hour forever. This realization is also part of what motivated him to auction off his massive car yard. Even though it was to settle the farmland police, he also thought about it as a way so his wife and son wouldn't inherit the chaotic physical burden of managing it. He still works hard, but it drains him faster now. In late 2025, the Rust Bros posted a video detailing a massive 40-day cross-country road trip. Mike joked afterward that the drive completely took him out and left him utterly exhausted, admitting that he couldn't run with the young boys and needed energy. To protect his health, Mike has intentionally slowed down his operation. He takes on fewer project deadlines and delegates much of the heaviest physical lifting to his workers and shop mechanics. Fans have now grown to accept that while they might see him moving a bit more stiffly or looking tired in recent Rust Bros YouTube videos, it is just the reality of a 68-year-old rock blaster living life to the absolute fullest. During the shop's prime time, he was such a passionate character that apart from a business rival, he would even fight with his son. Dad, the dreamer, versus son, the realist, and others. His son's primary role in the shop is financial survival, which frequently collapses under Mike's absolute refusal to build cars for profit. They would go back and forth, but he never seemed to win against his dad's passion. One time in Season 3, Mike poured everything into a 1968 Pontiac Beaumont for a charity auction. He essentially pulled his own budget out from under the shop, sinking thousands of dollars into a vehicle that brought in zero business revenue, forcing Connor to scramble just to pay the shop's bills. In another instance, Mike took on a rusted Lincoln Continental with a budget that Connor calculated perfectly to make a slim profit. Mike ignored the math, kept adding expensive custom parts, and ultimately sold the car for a $10,000 net loss, prompting an iconic on-camera blowout where Connor threatened to walk away from the business. Mike's constant impulse buying got so bad that Connor famously gave him an ultimatum. If Mike brought home one more unrestored junk car, Connor would physically blow up one of the cars currently sitting in the yard. Even though his issues with his father were corporate and serious, they still maintained a good level of understanding between them. And this was the same situation with the show's producer. With Matt Shuchuk, Mike was extremely playful. Their dynamic is filled with him trying to pick on Matt for no reason other than that he finds it funny. He would routinely prank Matt, leave him stranded, and playfully complain on camera about him loving staged scenes instead of real ones. There was one more person Mike loved going back and forth with, and this was Big Donnie Kleinfelder, a fellow collector who is Mike's direct competitor on screen. Anytime they interacted, one could feel the tension in the air as their immense egos clashed. They would engage in high-stakes trades where each man tried to outswindle the other. If Mike needs a rare part or a heavy toe, Donnie will demand an absurd trade, and vice versa. Despite the constant trash-talking and dramatic standoffs over property boundaries and vehicle values, they share a deep, old-school respect as two survivors of the British Columbia classic car scene. Till today, despite his clashes, Mike Hall still remains a beloved, down-to-earth automotive icon. Today, he focuses on personal builds, epic road trips, and meeting fans, proving his passion for classic cars transcends any business setback. What are your thoughts on how the shop ended? What do you think happened to the community after he left? And what do you think about Mike's relationship with his crew? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.